Hi, this is Carol Rose Atkinson, president of IE-CAMFT. I'm here with Nicole Serrano. Welcome to this interview. Thank you so much for being willing to be a part of this.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, you didn't have to, and I really appreciate it. So can you, explain to whoever's listening who you are and why we're having this conversation?
Sure. So my name is Nicole Serrano. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist with a private practice here in Rancho Cucamonga. And we are doing this interview because I'm presenting this month at the IE-CAMFT chapter for essentially it's an EMDR 101 type of presentation. Yeah.
Right. I was just telling you that I was looking at the information, and it's going to be so useful because EMDR 101 is like needed.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's like, EMDR, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
So I was told you I was going to tell my story on why I got involved.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was about 15 years ago, maybe longer. Somebody did EMDR on me, and it was like a 15-minute thing. Changed my life in 15 minutes. Now, I know that's not the common thing, but I have 20 years, but it is possible. Well, I'm living proof it's possible.
Right.
But I had done my work. I had spent many years in therapy, and my biggest thing for me was going on stage. I was like nervous. And also I wanted to sing on stage. And, even though I never did that. And in 15 minutes, she was done. And then I went on stage at my work, and I was nervous, but then I never sang on stage. And then I sang on stage a number of years later, never had a nervous problem. And now I sing in front of 3,500 people. So, and no nerves. And that was from that event that happened back then, from, all those years ago. So why did you get into EMDR?
So first of all, it's an amazing story. I love that. I love hearing when clients do go through this and feel like there's no way. This always bothered me my entire life.
Yeah.
But I actually was introduced to EMDR when I was in undergraduate school at San Diego State University. And I remember hearing my husband back then, boyfriend, was in the Marine Corps. And so there was a lot of talk back then about PTSD and what was happening with everyone coming back home from the war. And so it really piqued my interest. Fast forward, you're getting through undergrad and graduate school. And so it was not on my mind. I was trying to survive. And once we finished graduate school, I remember seeing it again online, seeing it become more popular. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I was really interested, get my license. And I have a colleague who specializes in eating disorders, and she was going through her own certification process with SEEDS. And she was like, you know what, her consultant was telling her about EMDR, and it's so important even for that population. So I started looking into it more and essentially just dove in and paid for that training. I did want to pursue certification, so I went through AMDR. And through there,
EMDR, because a lot of people are not going to know what that is.
Yeah, so it's the EMDR International Association. And essentially, this is where the training institute that Francine Shapiro was part of, which she actually just passed this year. So it's been being carried on by everyone that she worked with that really believes in her work. But this is the protocol, the training that they really stick to try to make it evidence-based. And this is where you can continue to actually get certified in it. So there
Francine Shapiro is the one that created.
Yes. So Francine Shapiro is the person who discovered this by, just using it on some veteran friends that she had, and just had this theory, and it worked. And she continued to take off with it, do a lot of research, lots of people, places around the world have continued to do research. There's a lot of heavy research in Europe that happens. So anyway, did that, and the person that did the facilitating, the trainer, her name was Alicia Avila, and she was from San Diego, and she was talking about how at that time she was at UCSD, but of course there was communication with SDSU. So it just felt nice. It came full circle. Like, oh yeah, I remember that time. And that's where I heard about it. So really great training. And since I've been using it with clients, of course, let me back up a little bit. You have to, when you're trained, you get EMDR done on you. And it was incredible to me. At that time, there was something going on in my family. And, I thought, I'm not going to do EMDR with people who are just learning EMDR. Like, I don't want them, to know that.
Right, because you go back and forth and role play. But
right.
role
It was like, yeah, you're talking about my deepest, darkest secrets. Like, so I thought I could trick the system. And I was like, I know what I'm going to pick to talk about. I'm going to talk about something that happened that I've resolved. It's not an issue. I'll just roll with it. And I tried so hard, and I could not believe that I was really trying to focus there. And when we started the process, I could not stop my brain from making a connection to what was going on presently in my life, which of course, at that time, connected to childhood trauma. And I remember going, stop, I'm not ready for this. And I'll never forget the person. My partner was like, oh my gosh, I messed up. And I was like, nope, you were doing it. So after that training, I went to go get my own EMDR therapy, which was incredible. We did 2 sessions of 2 hours, 2-hour blocks. It was really
that's the usual 90 minutes, 2 hours on average.
Right. And just had some really deep trauma that was resolved. By resolved, I mean, we got it down to a 0 neutral. It's not something that upsets me anymore. It'll always be a bad thing. That's not what we're trying to get rid of. It's just the emotional disturbance.
Yeah. So the memory's there. It's not like we go off into La La Land and forget. It's just the emotional connection is no longer there, right?
Yes. So I love it. And, as I tell people, I kind of drink that Kool-Aid, and I'm completely in it. I love.
Once it's not the purple Kool-Aid, we're good.
No, not that kind. But I love working with my clients with it. I've seen incredible work here in my office. People with complex trauma, which usually takes longer, more sessions, because there's a lot of different pieces that go into that. But parts of this complex trauma being resolved, people walking out saying, that's bothered me my entire life. And I can honestly say, I'm about to go have lunch with my mom and it's okay, or, people who had a pretty serious trauma, whether it was a robbery or, something that had happened within the past 2 years, or in the past 6 months, and to be able to work through that, to them felt like, oh my gosh, I can walk out of here and feel safe. And what I always tell them is, it's not just this, that's healing them. It's their brain, their own mind is wired for healing. And I think that's why I just love this so much.
Right. You were bringing up the training, and I made really good friends from my training. People are still in my life. There's been times like me and one of my friends from my training all those years ago, we would go, this month is my turn, this month is your turn. We would go to each other's offices.
Right.
But I was known in my training as the spider lady.
The spider lady. Where's that from?
Because I had a thing about black widow spiders. And, so they were, of course, it had nothing to do with that. And it turned out to be my mom. So, I don't care about talking about that.
Right.
It turned into that, my childhood. And it's interesting. My mother was just a little tiny person, but this was like a black widow spider the size of a room. And, and that's what I got to work through as part of my training. We did that again and again. That was a
right.
but it's just so interesting how we put symbols and all of those things that that don't necessarily have anything to do with one another, with what we're working on. And when we start working through with EMDR, it's like, oh, that's what that thing is.
Right. Absolutely. I think it's amazing. The book that I had read was The Body Keeps a Score by Dr. Besser van der Kolk. And again, that was around that same time that there was something going on in my family, not with me, but with a family member. We care about our family members. And so that just felt like it clicked. And that was the other thing that got me to, you know what, I just need to go. Like, I just need to do this training. And it was great because I was able to connect my own family member with a great clinician who's in Claremont. And she's doing that work. And it's just really healing, really incredible.
It's really incredible. My company, the Trauma and Healing Foundation, I mean, it's working with that trauma. I'm military competency trained. And so, of course, when I went to those trainings, it was interesting to see that I would talk to, different military people that had gone through stuff. And they tell me that they would do, I'm totally blanking on what the treatment is, where they just over and over again repeat their trauma. And so they're traumatized by doing that. And yet EMDR, me and my friend sat in the front and kept like trying to raise our hands going, hello, EMDR. They don't have to go through that. And it's, it's still APA recommended for PTSD, no?
Right. That's my understanding, as far as because of all the research that they've had, because it's been able to actually been reproduced over and over again. Yeah. This is something that the VA uses. This is something that is really well known for PTSD. Now, the way that I look at it is, if we break down PTSD, who doesn't have trauma in their life? Do we meet the diagnostic criteria for PTSD? Probably not, but there's definitely trauma. And I just think it's incredible how we have things that are recorded on our nervous system, in our mind, that essentially we're pressing play on each and every time, which is impacting our reactions and our behaviors in our daily life, and so.
Right. So we're triggered by things. I remember, I think I got this in training. I can't remember, but the description that I heard and I use often is like, you've got, I say an owie, because there's the mom in me. So I think I think like that, but there's a cut with a piece of sand in it.
Right.
Like EMDR takes the sand out so it can heal properly. That's how I describe it to my clients.
I love that description. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but we need to get to that piece of sand, because otherwise it's infected.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, you have great training, and do you find that you need to see clients for very long?
It depends on, again, if it's more complex trauma, where there's been years and years of different traumatic events, or if there's been one or two traumatic events that have happened. The shortest amount of sessions that I've had that have completed a full treatment plan has been 2 sessions. And by full treatment plan, that's usually the childhood trauma, the worst trauma, and then present triggers. And I also have a client that I'm still working with that has some complex trauma, and it's been about over a year now. Now, I think one of the big misunderstandings is it might not always be EMDR, it might not always be reprocessing. In between those sessions, we're going to have some talk therapy sessions because life happens, and sometimes our clients say, I don't want to do this. It's heavy. And I really just need to talk today. And so we go through that. But all of that I see as like this really big cognitive interweave, what we're talking about, because they're continuing to process that. And then we come into the next session and that continues, with that reprocessing.
Do you understand the term cows? It's the crisis of the week. So sometimes they come in with the crisis of the week, and that alone, it's like, okay, well, we're going to push that aside for now because now is not the time.
Right.
Right. Unless they decide to do too many cows, and then I'm like, are you sure this is your goal?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So the other thing that was crossing my mind when you were talking is the channels that we see, like different the different channels that that somebody could walk in. Maybe it's a security or safety channel, that that can actually, if we work through one, maybe sometimes some of those other events that are similar in nature can go with that. It can be healed with that. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, so in EMDR, we look at some pretty main categories that essentially these incidents or these events tap into. So one is safety, one is responsibility, one is defectiveness, and I'm pretty sure I'm missing one. I can't think of it at the top of my head, but
I didn't make my list.
In essence, under these categories, we have these negative cognition. So negative core beliefs, essentially, that, for instance, if I think of, defectiveness, that there's something genuinely wrong with me, and I'm going through life and I'm behaving in certain ways, or I'm getting really, really hurt about certain things that people say, even if their intent is not there. At some point in my life, I did have an experience that taught me I'm not good enough. And now I'm going on through life truly believing that I'm not good enough. Now, here's where sometimes my clients feel like, but I do think that I'm good enough. I'm a strong person, and the way that I explain that is we have our reptilian brain, our emotion brain, and then our logic brain. Our logic brain will often tell us, no, you are good enough. You've done amazing things. Like, of course you're good enough. And that emotion brain will often is the one that's like, no, you're not. You're not good enough. So, if someone can't hang out with you tonight and they decide to hang out with maybe their coworkers, it's because you're not good enough, not because people have different groups of people in their life and we just, hang out with different people sometimes. And so we are trying to trace back that I'm not good enough, that negative cognition under the channel of defectiveness, and really see where's this coming from. And that's how we do a float back technique where we trace, the negative cognition as well as the emotion that comes up and the where you feel that in your body, so the physical sensation. And when we connect with those at the same time, it's incredible that your mind can actually float back and recall other times when you have felt this way. So for instance, let's say in my childhood, and I'm making this up, my mom said I couldn't come, with her and my sister because I was too small. And I perceived that as I wasn't good enough. Right. And my sister just kind of stuck her tongue out at me and was like, haha, you don't get to come, or whatever that looks like. Right. So as much as, and I get a lot of clients that are like, I feel so dumb saying this, like, this is ridiculous. I know they didn't mean it that way. But at that time, your mind and your body perceived that as you're not good enough. So it essentially holds that and to protect you, to try to, get you to realize this, don't feel this way again. And what we're trying to do is take that and unpair that emotional disturbance with the event and also repair adaptive information, which is the actual, positive, healthy information. Your sister was a little mean, sticking her tongue out at you, but you guys were children. People do this. And your mom certainly doesn't think you're not good enough, hopefully, right? But
that we don't know for sure.
Right. If that's not the case, then it's, that you're good enough. And with different things, and then we move forward with that. Now that can heal and generalize a lot of other memories or situations. And at the same time, going back to that float back, because I'm thinking treatment plan, then we're also recognizing for your body what was the worst time, the worst memory you have of feeling not good enough. And if we can also heal that and close that and repair that with adaptive information, that positive cognition of I am good enough or I am worthy, then that in essence will create a lot of healing as well. And then that trickles down into our present triggers. If you say, let's go get a cup of coffee, and somebody says, oh, I really can't right now. That this is not about you. You are good enough. And that might be about their schedule, or it might just be,
Right.
coincide,
Right. So there are people that will be watching this that are not clinicians, plenty of people that are just average people. So some of the words like cognition, some of these words that you're using, people will or will not understand.
Yeah.
So the float back, that makes sense to me. It may not make sense even to a therapist.
Yeah.
So cognition, that thought that you have, that negative thought, right?
Yes.
And so that's that I'm unworthy kind of thing, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is that you work on. But that fallback thing as well. To me, I think of it as, when do you remember that first feeling of feeling that way? But how would you describe that? Like in layman's terms?
Usually with my clients, I do explain EMDR. I explain how, when we are in our deepest sleep cycle, when we're in REM sleep, this is when our brain processes things, and when we file things where it's supposed to go. Now, when I'm trying to explain how to think about that negative core belief, usually people connect with that. Like, yeah, at the end of the day, and I like to say, we're thinking this, we have this event, but when you whittle it down, when you really whittle it down and come down to what is it inside of you that feels this way, that's feeling maybe defensive, or that's feeling angry or hurt, why? Where's that coming from? And I give them this list. I give them a sheet of all these negative, the channels, and then the negative cognitions. I say, what fits with that? When you're thinking to yourself, and people will connect right away. It's this one, or it's this one, or they'll pick 5 or 6.
Right.
Yeah. So when I get
this, but what resonates the most at this moment?
What fits the most? What resonates the most right now? And they're usually able to find one, or we'll work together and we'll kind of combine one that feels like it fits the best. That are usually in the same category. And once we connect with that, and then I have them say, I'll say, okay, what was the worst image? Here's the negative belief about yourself. What is the emotion that comes up when you think of that right now? Where do you feel that in your body? And then I'll say, okay, if you can just hold those, if you can just bring up those words, I'm not good enough, the image of your sister sticking her tongue out at you, and the feeling that in your chest. And when you connect those and hold those together, I wonder if you can allow your mind to just go back maybe to your childhood memories. See if you can go to your earliest childhood memories, and what comes up, what pops up for you. And usually I get this look of surprise, because sometimes I close their eyes, and they'll get this look of surprise, like, okay. And sometimes people are like, I know exactly where this is from. And sometimes people will say, I cannot believe this is coming up in my brain right now. But I remember this. And I'll say, okay, well, how old were you? And we'll make sure that, that was closest to the youngest. And I'll say, okay, great. So we're going to leave that there for now. And I wonder if you can think of your whole entire life. In your entire life, what is the worst time that you felt? And I'll say the negative belief, the emotion, and the body sensation. And usually people will write away, it was this. And we'll write that down. And so that's how we do that float back. And then I'll ask, okay, how about currently in your life, what present situations, people, places, things bring up this sensation, this belief, emotion, and sensation? And they'll start listing things that they initially came into therapy with. Oh, it's this, and it's this, and this. Okay. And that's how we start talking about, great. We prefer to start with the youngest memory. That's the one that can do a lot of generalization. But sometimes it depends on where people are. If they are, more in crisis, they need to be more functioning in this area, we'll start there, whether it's a present trigger or the worst. The worst I'm a little bit more careful with, just depending on what it is, because it can, again, create more. It's very heavy to go through that. But there's a lot of assessing at that point. We have to assess, what are their safety? Do they have a support system? What's in place? Can we contain? Can they do a calm place or something for grounding? And if they can, and if this is going to help them move through it, or at least desensitize it enough where they can be more functioning, then we go with that.
Right. And that's another point that you're bringing up in my mind, is that not everybody's a candidate for this at every point in their life. It just depends on if they are, if it's, you got to assess if they're a good candidate. If they're not, make a switch to a different kind of treatment. Right.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things about EMDR is I think there's a lot of misconception that, an EMDR therapist is only going to do this and they're not paying attention to other ways. And that's definitely not true. I do think as an EMDR therapist, I think of the adaptive information. I think about, okay, what could this be linked to? However, we definitely have sessions where we're doing a lot of other techniques, where there's still that eclectic component with therapy. We're, first and foremost person-centered, and I'm meeting my client where they're at. And sometimes we're talking, like you said, about cows, about the incident of the week of what's going on, because we're human first. And so it's important to be able to, work through all that.
Right. I mean, I always call it my bag of tricks, yes, I could go to EMDR. Yes, I could go to TFCBT. Yes, I could go to, I'm a family systems therapist. Yes, I could go, wherever I need to go to, in whatever, intervention and or way of working with the client. I'm trying to think about the layman that may not understand the word intervention. But whatever we have to do, we switch it up. If we're good clinicians, then we're going to have a big bag of tricks to pull from and switch it up all the time. You just never know what's going to work.
Right.
And if, most of us are very, very intuitive. So we kind of go, oh, that's not working, is it?
Right. And I think the other thing that I really try to explain to clients is, what I love about EMDR is that you are in control. My client's in control, because we're going to go with things and we're going to talk. But at any point, if someone is not happy with or does not feel good or feels too overwhelmed, we have a very simple stop for them. I just tell them stop, because if someone can't verbally, if they're crying or if something's going on, they can't verbally say stop. Just that hand signal. And honestly, I'm staying in tune the entire time. So if I see them put down tappers, or if I see them look away, right, that's already a signal. So we stop and we check in and we ground. And honestly, kudos to my clients, because most of the time they definitely say, okay, I just need to breathe, and then we can keep going. Or we'll pause that, but we'll process what's been coming up, and that, so we close the EMDR session, but we process the rest of the session, what's been coming up. And that's how that continues. Your brain continues to reprocess. So it's really incredible what people do.
Takes a lot of courage. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to go to a therapist. So many of, I don't know, your clients, my clients come in and go, I've never been to therapy in my life, and I'm getting that all the time. It's so interesting. Because more cultures and more people are, it's less of a stigma. And so, they're like, but I don't know what's going to happen here. I've been meaning to do a video on the first step, with me, in terms of that. But they really, once they get in there, right, they connect. But it takes a lot of courage to look at your stuff. It takes a lot of courage to work through the stuff. And, whoever's listening, guess what? When you work through it, that doesn't have control of you anymore. I mean, I come from horrific trauma, and those memories are, they're in my past. They, do I get triggered? Almost never. Like, boy, life has to be like crazy before, but pretty much never anymore. But that took a lot of hard work, and anybody that has the courage to do that, how can you not give them kudos?
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's, you know, whether it's a client that's coming into therapy for the very first time, or I'll get clients who are referred by other clinicians who have been doing a year or more than a year's worth of work, and building up to a place where they'll tell me, you know, I've been working with this therapist for a while, and they told me that they think I'm ready, and that we talked about it, and I'm ready to do some deep trauma work. And, you know, I'm trusting that clinician. And so, and it's great because they have trust in the work that they've been doing, and they want to get through this piece or this aspect. And we work through it, and they feel like, I can't believe it. You know, the therapist that had referred them was right. You know, this is possible. And so it's great. It's a really great, really community effort, individual effort, that happens.
Yeah. I want your information put on, what is your website?
It's www.nscounseling.org.
Got it. Okay, so that will go on. Anything else that you want put up, please let me know.
Okay.
It's going to go on LinkedIn. It's going to go on Twitter. It's going to go on, I forget all this stuff, Instagram and YouTube and everything. And then I'm going to send it to different therapy places, just so that they, you know, the more education we get, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we want you to come to her presentation. I believe it's October 25th at Loma Linda University, where we have a satellite location. I'm going to put that link on. If you'd like to register, please do. If you'd like to join CAMFT or IE-CAMFT, you need to join CAMFT and then IE-CAMFT, because you know you have to join the mother organization. But we'd love you to do that. And you know, we offer trainings like you that every month we're doing these, you know, 2-unit CEUs. If you're a therapist, you know, you got to have so many within a year. And the more you learn, the better.
Absolutely. I agree.
Do you have anything further you would like to say?
No, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
I know, right? Yeah. We'll see you then. I will be introducing you at the front, and I look forward to that. Now that I feel like I know you, it makes it a lot easier. So I will see you then. I'm going to end this broadcast, and thank you guys for listening. And you know, get the word out about Nicole. She's got a huge heart for this population.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.